Okay. Hi again, everyone. We'll start on, we are holding halacha 9 in the Maznayim summary of Code of Jewish Law. It's on page 8.
Are you doing Gemara, Talmud?
We're doing the summary of Code of Jewish Law, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch.
Oh, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Okay.
Just also, I'm going to mute everyone. Just to.
Could you tell us Can you tell us which chapter and which halacha it is for those that don't have the Maznayim?
Yeah, it's chapter 72, Siman Ayin Beis, halacha 9. Okay, let me just one more thing. Okay, so. Nine is taking one more technical thing to take care of, then we'll be ready to begin. Okay. So we're starting from in chapter 72, halacha 9. The day of Shabbos is a day that we don't go to work, a day that we don't do work. Is there any restrictions on Friday of not working? Is there any time on Friday that we say it's a time that we stop, that you should end work early to give time to prepare for Shabbos? So that's what we're going to discuss in halacha 9, that there's a time before Shabbos, and one should stop working to give a person time to prepare for Shabbos. Now there are exceptions to this. One's allowed to do work if it's for Shabbos, which we'll have to discuss what's considered for Shabbos. And the second exception is that it's only work that is considered the Hebrew word malacha, a malacha, something that is considered work that is biblically forbidden on Shabbos. There's something could be a lot of labor, but not be considered something could be a strenuous labor, but it's not considered a biblical considered work when it comes to Shabbos, a forbidden work on Shabbos. So only things that are forbidden work does a person have to stop working. Does a person have to stop working a certain time before Shabbos? So when is this time that a person would have to stop working on Friday? The time is 2.5 hours before sunset. But these hours are not regular hours that we see the way we calculate these hours are not just regularly how we have our clock that we see, and we see okay, 3 to 4, let's say from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock is an hour. The hours fluctuate depending on the time of the year. Does anyone know when is the beginning of the daytime according to when does the halacha consider it to be the start of the daytime, not the day, the daytime. For instance, there are certain mitzvahs that have to be done during the day. Tefillin.
בצאת הכוכבים.
So there's when is that day on when is it considered daytime? There's certain mitzvahs that have to be done during the day when it's light outside and not when it's dark.
Oh, right.
So when is it considered? When halachically do we start? Does the day start? Does anyone know?
When the sun comes out.
Very good. Sunrise. Sunrise is the beginning of the day. When's the end of the day? And
the 3 stars.
So that is correct.
Yossi, what about Alos Shachar?
So really, it is a good point about Alos Shachar, the crack of dawn. That is really a time that it's the beginning of the day, but when there's a difference of and really that is that when the day starts, Alos Shachar. But we decided that since it's not so recognizable that it's day, that it's light outside, we don't want people to come to do certain mitzvahs that are bound to be done during the day. We don't want them to do it at night. So the rabbis decided that we're going to call it the start point of the day to be the mitzvahs that are time bound to be done during the day. They should be done when it's sunrise, not by Alos Shachar, by the crack of dawn. But really, the day starts at Alos Shachar. But when it comes to the halachic rules, it starts at sunrise.
I think Alot HaShachar is for praying, isn't it?
So Alot HaShachar, you are allowed to pray from Alot HaShachar. It is preferable to wait till sunrise.
Right.
But let's not get too much caught up in this idea. I just wanted to lead it up to what we're going to speak about 2.5 hours before that the work should be stopped on Friday 2.5 hours before Shabbos. 2.5 hours before the end of the day. So the start of the day, when we consider it, when in halacha, in law, in Jewish law, we say there's a time that the daylight starts. According to the Alter Rebbe, there's different opinions, but just let's keep it to the Alter Rebbe. It starts by sunrise. And the day ends by, although it really gets dark although it's considered for sure night by, as someone mentioned, Seisas HaKochavim, when it's nightfall, but we consider it already the end of the day by sunset. And the time between sunset and Seisas HaKochavim, nightfall, is considered a doubt whether it's day or night. But in regards to splitting up when it's considered day and night, or splitting for the hours of the day, we go from the day hours we consider from sunrise to sunset. So now that this is the daytime, from sunrise until sunset. And the day is divided by 12 hours. So for instance, this is in New York, where I'm not sure how it is in other places in Florida. The day starts when is sunrise? 6:30 right now. I'm saying today. When is it sunset? 4:47 p.m. So the day is not actually 12 hours. It's around 10 hours. 10 hours and 17 minutes. So that amount of time would be divided in 12. And each hour and each hour would be, and then we would call an hour a 12th of that time period. So when the day is from 6, let's say when it's an equinox, the day is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's simple. When is 9:30? When is it a certain part of the day? But it could get, but the hours according to in Jewish law, when we say it has to be a certain amount of hours in the day, it goes to depending on the season, time of year. Depending on the time of year, you would divide the day into 12, into 12, the time from sunrise to sunset. Now will be the hours of the day. So now, in this halacha, it's going to speak about that you should stop working from 2.5 hours before sunset. So that's the halacha about working. Stop working 2.5 hours before sunset. Now that time, 2.5 hours, isn't 150 minutes always. It could be when it's the equinox, it'll be 150 minutes. But depending on how long are the hours, the seasonal hours, that's how much time it's going to be, the 2.5 hours before sunset. Okay, so now let's see inside halacha 9 in chapter 72. Ein lasis malacha b'derech kva be'erev Shabbos mimincha ktana u'lamayla. One should not do work in a regular manner on Friday from the time of mincha ktana and onwards, which mincha ktana is 9.5 hours into the day. So from 9.5 hours on into Friday, one should not do work. And as I mentioned, this is work that is one of the 39 malachas, 39 forbidden works to be done according to the Torah on Shabbos. So a person cannot do it in a regular manner. Abu b'derech aray mutter. But if it's an occasion, as an occasion, occasionally one's allowed to work past 9.5 hours on Friday. So it's forbidden to regularly schedule work to have work regularly scheduled once it's 9.5 hours into the day on Friday. But if it's just as an occasion, then it's permissible. And a lot of work that is done could be one that it's not one of the 39 malachas. Most just selling things is not one of the 39 malachas. Now, well, let's say, so that's in general. In general, one's not allowed to do work if it's fixed work once it's 9.5 hours into the day on Friday. Shabbos, gam achar kach mutter. If the work's being done for Shabbos, then even after 9.5 hours into the day, you're allowed to do work. So we'll discuss later outside what does it mean for the Nida Shabbos. Big de chavere b'schar aser. To make a garment to tailor a garment for a friend, to get paid for it is forbidden. Mishu ani staker, let's say it of Shabbos. However, a person that is poor, that wants to make money in order to have money to buy his needs for Shabbos, mutter loy b'chol hayom k'may b'chol hamayit. Then it will be permissible for him to do work, just like it's permissible for him to do work and get paid on the intermediate days of either Sukkot or Pesach. So we see that a person that's going to tailor someone's clothing, which that's for a need for Shabbos. A person needs his clothing fixed to have clothing to wear for Shabbos. That is permissible, but not to get paid for it. And then if a person's poor and needs money to have money to spend for Shabbos, then he's allowed to do work even to get paid. Now, l'saper es Yisrael mutter kol yom. To give a Jew a haircut is permissible the whole day of Friday. Afilu ma'isa uman, afilu b'schar. Even if he's doing a professional work, he's doing it in a professional manner, and he's getting paid. So why is it that giving a haircut, we allow a person to get paid, and sewing a piece of clothing, you're not allowed to get paid? The reason is mipnei shehatis beres nikadesh shenasis achshav b'shvil haShabbos. Because the haircut, it's recognizable that it's being done for Shabbos. A person's getting a haircut, and now he's going to have his hair will be nice for Shabbos. The person's hair will be nice for Shabbos, as opposed to when a person's clothing gets fixed, gets tailored. A person doesn't know if the person's going to wear this clothing on Shabbos. It could just be that work's being done with the piece of clothing, and the clothing's going to be worn not on Shabbos, on a different day. Yesh lischer es hachaniyos sha'achas lefnei Shabbos. So stores that sell food, which they're also selling things for Shabbos. They're allowed to be opened later than 9.5 hours into the day, but they still should be closed an hour before Shabbos to give them time to prepare for Shabbos. So we have in this halacha the law of not allowed to do work. One of the 30, if it's work that's one of the 39 forbidden works to be done on Shabbos, then you can't do it on Friday when it's 9.5 hours into the day. If the work's being done in a regular, if you regularly have, it's forbidden to regularly schedule work then. But on occasion, it's permissible to do work then. And if work's being done for Shabbos, you're allowed to do work past this time. What's examples of work being done for Shabbos? A poor person that is trying to make money, so have money to spend for his Shabbos, to spend money for his Shabbos needs, or work that's being done, a person that's doing work, that this work is going to be used for Shabbos, either a haircut, getting a clothing tailored, and there's a store being person selling food that people could buy Shabbos food. So those are some examples of things that are allowed to be done past that are for Shabbos. These type of work that's for Shabbos is allowed to be done throughout the later on past the 9.5 hours into the day.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How did you discuss the case where the tailor thought the clothing was for Shabbos, but the person getting the clothing fixed had in mind not using it for Shabbos, and yet it looks like it can be done?
Sorry, let me make it a little more clear. The tailor is doing work for Shabbos, and the person that asked the tailor to do the work, the person that asked the tailor to do the work is going to use that clothing for Shabbos. The reason why a person can't make a wage from such work is because a passerby won't realize that the work's being done for Shabbos. You might just say you want to do business, so you're doing business. You want to just do work closer to Shabbos, even, and think that perhaps the person's tailoring a garment that's only going to be used not for Shabbos. It'll be used later, different day, Sunday, Monday. So in reality, the clothing will be used for Shabbos, but not the person that owns the garment, or the tailor, but another person that's just going to pass by is going to see that this tailor has his business, has his store open, has his storefront open, and he's tailoring. And he's going to think and the person's going to think that's passing by that it's permissible to do work on after 9.5 hours into the day, even if it's not for Shabbos.
Okay,
so after that, they said, do it in a way that's not so. The work should be done without getting paid. I guess when a person doesn't get paid, the person will know that when the person's not getting paid, it won't look like he's doing that. They want to make that. The rabbis want to make that enactment, that it shouldn't be done in the same fashion. It should have less of a work. That type of work should be done in a not as regular. Still be done, but without pay.
But the passerby doesn't know anything about whether he's getting paid or not.
It's a good question. I hear yeah.
If you do it in a back room, then the passerby won't see it.
Right. So maybe I don't know for sure it's about the passerby. But it could be also for the tailor himself that shouldn't come to. It's a good question. The reason is because that it's the difference between a tailor and a barber is that the barber, the job of a barber is recognizable. This work is being done for Shabbos. Maybe it's for the barber or the tailor themselves, that the barber knows I'm only working because it's for Shabbos. The tailor might not know. I don't know. It's a good question. That the passerby won't. I'm not sure exactly the answer. If you bring up a good point that the passerby may not. How is he supposed to know that it's that the person's getting paid?
I would guess that
the way that it worked many years ago was different than now. And,
I would guess that the tailor says, don't pay me, but he also hides the work from passerby. Do it with a curtain down or in a back room.
You bring up a good point. Just unfortunately, we have a lot that we want to get to today.
Okay.
One, you could try to speak to. You could maybe after the class we could talk about it more.
Oh well, we'll leave it. If there's no answer, we'll leave it up. We'll leave it alone.
Okay.
Rabbi, I have a quick question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Thank you. You're saying 9.5 hours into the day. Day, can you define it? Is it midnight and the clock says it's day the next day, or is it sunrise when daylight?
Sunrise. So
Okay.
9.5, there's the day is from sunrise to sunset. And however much time that is, you divide that amount of time into 12. So if it's 12 hours, then you divide it into 12, then it's each hour is 60 minutes. If it's 10 hours, you divide 10 hours into 12, it'll be each Jewish law hour would be 50 minutes. So it's that's when the day the day starts from sunrise. Is that clear? Did that answer the question?
It does, Rabbi. Thank you. You have a question in the chat. I don't know if you noticed it.
No, I didn't notice it, but
Lady asked about medical professionals. What is the status of work for them?
okay, so it's medical professional is actually a lot of cases if it could be permissible on Shabbos. So it's more complicated. So not gonna go into all the detail. There's a lot of details, but that just bear in mind that there's even on Shabbos, if something is if there's any if there's a possibility of being of danger of one's life, then it's permissible to be done even on Shabbos. So needless to be said, it'll be permissible Friday afternoon when it's just a short time before Shabbos.
What if it is routine? What if it's a routine like a medical exam? Are they allowed to do routine items near or on Shabbos?
So it's a regular routine exam is allowed to be done on Shabbos. That's the question. Is allowed to be done on Shabbos. The medical there's a chapter on it that will be later in the laws of Shabbos. So the truth is didn't review it right now, so I'm not so familiar with it. All the details. It's a little more complicated. So
no connection.
Okay. Then, so that is, any more questions on halacha 9 before we move to the next halacha? Okay.
I guess not.
Halacha 10. So going back to food on Shabbos. Shabbos, we have delicious food, and a person could, now in halacha 9, we're going to learn about before Shabbos, food before Shabbos. In a Jewish home, you could have a Jewish home that's preparing food for Shabbos. Person walks into such a home, smells the food of Shabbos, the person's appetite goes up like anything. Just has such a craving for all the food. It's such all the delicious smells they smell, the challah, the soup, the kugel, the chicken, the cholent. There's so much that a person has such a big appetite. Is a person allowed to have a shot? What if a person decides, I want to just I don't want to wait till Shabbos to eat all this delicious food. I have an appetite. I want to eat right now. I want to enjoy the Shabbos food right now. But a person have a Shabbos meal Friday afternoon. could a person eat such a meal? I'm not calling it could a person eat a full meal Shabbos afternoon? It's with the what would be the does the law allow a person to have close to Shabbos a nice sized meal? So that's what we're going to talk about in Halacha 10. Just the point I want to point out is that I'm going to try to add the times where the Alter Rebbe what's the ruling of the Alter Rebbe? So I might say that it says this in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, in the summary of the Code of Jewish Law, but in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, in the first Lubavitcher Rebbe's his Code of Jewish Law, if it says something different, I'm gonna try to mention it. Halacha 10. Mitesha shois zmanyes ulamayla mitzvah lemnaya milakvaya suda. From 9 seasonal hours and onward in the day of Friday, this is referring to, it's a mitzvah to refrain from having a set meal. Afilu mashu ragu b'chol, even if it's a type of meal that he would regularly have during the week. It's not anything like a meal that's on the, even if it's just the type of meal that I'll have during the week. And on Shabbos, he's going to have a bigger meal. Even such a meal, it's a mitzvah to refrain from having once it's 9 hours into the day. So according to the Alter Rebbe, this time is from 10 hours into the day. So it would only be the last 2 hours before sunset. So if sunset was 6 p.m., and each halachic hour was 60 minutes, so from 4 p.m., a person should refrain from having a meal. What's considered a meal? So a meal in what the law considers a meal is when a person washes to eat something, or they eat food that comes from the 5 grains, and they eat the amount of around 2 ounces, or the amount of 2 ounces or more. So to have less than 2 ounces, or to eat things that aren't from the 5 grains, to have let's say just a bowl of chicken soup, some chicken, potato cocoa, or whatever else, if it's not from the 5 grains, it would be permissible to have, and there wouldn't be a limit of how much a person could eat. But of course, what?
Rabbi, I think that if the food was bought for Shabbos, you're not allowed to eat it any other time.
So if the food was bought for Shabbos, you're supposed to have it for Shabbos. Yes, that is correct.
Right.
But you are allowed to have a taste the food before Shabbos.
Okay.
So although that a person could eat any food that's not from the 5 bread or from the 5 grains, let me just explain what the 5 grains mean. Food that could become what a halacha what the Jewish law considers bread is when it comes from 5 different types of grain. One of these 5 grains can make bread according to what Torah considers bread. These grains are wheat, barley, spelt, rye, and oats. So food that has in them those, if a food has one of those ingredients in it, one of those grains as an ingredient in it, it would be considered from a type of food, a food from the 5 grains. Now, although that you could eat, there's no limit to how much you could eat from other foods, still a person should have a good appetite for Shabbos and make sure that they have not to overeat with other things if it's going to cause that they don't have a good appetite when they have their Shabbos meal. A good appetite for Shabbos, yeah. The second line in Halacha Yud, whereby the word usuda. Usuda she'ina ragu ba b'chol, afile hi sudas mitzvah. So a meal that one doesn't regularly have during the week. It's a bigger meal that one would have during the week. Even if it's a meal that it's a mitzvah to have such a meal. I'll discuss soon what does it mean it's a mitzvah to have such a meal. If it's possible to make such a meal that's a mitzvah on a different day, then it's asur la'aseh be'erev Shabbos kol yom afilu b'baker. Then it'll be forbidden to make such a meal even in the morning even Friday morning. Then it'll be forbidden to make such a meal even Friday morning. So what does it mean it's a meal, it's a mitzvah to have such a meal? So besides, we know Shabbos, it's a mitzvah to have a meal. But there's other types, there are other things that a person could do that would make it that there's a mitzvah to have a meal. For example, if there is a bris milah, circumcision, there's a mitzvah to have a meal together with the circumcision. Or a pidyon ben, a redemption of a firstborn. That when there's a baby that's born in certain circumstances, there's a mitzvah to redeem the firstborn. That it's considered the baby until the 30th day is considered in the real until for 30 days. Consider that considered sacred and not owned by the parents according to Torah, and there's a mitzvah for the father to redeem the firstborn child. So when at that ceremony, it's a mitzvah to have a meal. Then there's by a wedding, it's a mitzvah to have a meal. By a bar mitzvah, if the bar mitzvah boy says by a bar mitzvah it's a mitzvah, by a bar mitzvah it's a mitzvah to have a meal. If there's a completion of a Torah being written, it's a mitzvah to have a meal. If another example is if a person completes a tractate, it's a mitzvah also to celebrate and to have to make a celebration with eating. So in these scenarios, so these are different cases of where it's a mitzvah to have a meal. So in general, we say you shouldn't have such a occurrence on Friday in order that you shouldn't have a big meal on Friday. But there's an exception to this. Let's see the exception. Middle of halacha 10, pretty much right in the middle of the halacha. Sudas mitzvah, Cheshvan kavua yom. However, a meal that it's a mitzvah that it's the time to do the mitzvah is on this day. What are examples of this? Examples are Kegain Mila Upedina Ben, like a circumcision and redeeming a firstborn, and similar cases. In such a case, it's mutter, it's permissible to have, and you should have the meal on Friday. Nevertheless, it's preferable to have such a meal in the morning in order that there'll be more time for the meal until Shabbos commences, whole Shabbos. Below Yarbaba, and you shouldn't make it very big. And certainly you should not overeat in order that you should eat the Shabbos meal with an appetite. Just another, talk a little more about this idea that also could be a good thing if it's just based on what comes out from this halacha, that if a person's able to plan to do a person's going to make a special, let's say a family reunion, and there's going to be a nice meal. It could be better. It will be better. It's preferable to do it not on Friday, but on a different day, or any other time that they're going to plan to make a big meal. It's preferable to schedule it on a different day and not on Friday, so that we could give honor on Shabbos by having a nice appetite and it'll be more special to have the Shabbos meal when we're not so accustomed to having such big meals beforehand. And it's now becoming, it's like coming and now you come to Shabbos with, it'll be special, it'll make it more special when you're not accustomed to having such special meals. Any questions before we move on to the next halacha? Okay, we'll go to the next halacha. Halacha 11. This halacha will talk about the obligation for a man to go over the Torah every week, that week's Torah portion. In a shul, when there's a minyan, they read the Torah on Shabbos. You read the weekly Torah portion. So aside from the community reading the Torah portion, there's an obligation for each person to go over every week that week's Torah portion. For a man to go over that week's Torah portion. So let's see. Now let's read it inside. Chayav kol adam lahashlim parshiyasav im hatzibur. There's an obligation on every person to complete every week the Torah portion with the community. Dahainu, what does this mean? Sheyikra b'chol shavua parshas hashavua. That every week a person should read that week's Torah portion.
Rabbi?
How should he read that week? Read that week's Torah portion. You should read it Shnayim Mikra ve'echad Targum. Read the Torah portion twice in Hebrew. Yeah.
Yes. Is it the obligation? First you said it's obligation of every man, and then you said of every person. Which is it?
Sorry, I'm not hearing.
Okay.
You're on.
Say it again.
First you said it's an obligation of every man, and then you said of every person. Which one is it? Is it an obligation of every man or of every person?
It's an obligation for every man.
Well, but you can read Torah at any time, so it's not time bound. So why isn't it an obligation on every woman as well?
A good question. I'm not sure. It could be it's connected to reading the Torah with the community, and that is specifically when there's 10 men, do we read the Torah? I'm not sure the reason for it. It's a good question. I could look into it.
Yossi and everybody else, it does take time for even every man. It takes time for every man to read the Torah portion in that manner, twice in the Hebrew and once in the Targum. But it is a big obligation, and one we have trouble being Makayim. I guess the answer to Mrs. Goldberg is that if it takes a lot of time for a man, then it must take less time for a woman.
I'm not hearing so well. Let me.
Hey, Yossi, I need to raise your volume.
For some reason, even though my volume is up, I'm not sure why it does that. Okay. I could try to exit and come back. We'll see. Well, we'll just continue as it is.
Rabbi, may I digress for just a minute about the question about a feast or another event?
I don't hear
especially a bris. That's be done on the 8th day. If that 8th day falls on Friday or even Saturday, what does one do?
You do the bris.
I'm gonna continue reading inside. I'm sorry, I don't hear.
My question is about a bris. If that falls on Friday or even more so Saturday, what do you do about the bris? Because I know that I'm digressing to what you talked about in chapter 10, but I still have that question.
I apologize. I didn't hear the question.
All right, it's not working.
All right, I'll try it again.
For some reason, I'm not hearing, even though my volume is at 100%.
No, I'm
If it's
not
any help
muted.
to you, I know you do the bris on the 8th day, no matter what.
Now that's my question. The bris has to be done on the 8th day. What if the 8th day falls on Friday or Saturday?
You do.
They do the bris.
You do the bris.
You do the bris.
You do the bris, but you don't serve a meal.
You serve a small.
No, you can do
serve
what
a
you
meal.
need to do for the bris, which includes the meal.
Okay, so you do the bris
It's
even if
prepared
it's on
ahead of
Saturday.
time. It's prepared ahead of time
but
before
it's a small
Shabbos.
meal.
No, he said it's prepared ahead of time. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna continue.
Thank you.
It's also a small meal, so it doesn't.
So you have the obligation to read the weekly Torah portion twice in Hebrew and once in Aramaic. And on Sunday and onwards, it's considered reading it with the community. Because the community already started reading that week's Torah portion on the day before on Shabbos by the afternoon prayer. However, the best time to go over the parsha is Friday after midday. V'yesh l'kreis kol parsha. You should read the whole Torah portion. Dahainu psucha ois duma. Shtei pamim v'achar kach hatargum allow. So in the Torah, a weekly Torah portion has a lot of times different sections in it. Although there's one, let's say this week, the Parsha is Vayera, but there could be different sections of the Torah in this Parsha. So what it's saying over here is that how does a person go over the Torah? He should read the whole section of, not the whole Torah, weekly Torah portion, but that whole section of the Torah. There could be, for instance, 5 sections in one Torah portion. So a person should read,
At least.
He should read one Torah section, then read the Torah section a second time, and afterwards go back and read the Aramaic translation. And even if that section of the Torah stops in the middle of a verse of the Torah, you should stop in the middle of a verse and go over that section of the Torah and then read the Aramaic of that section. To point out, as you see in footnote 5, and if you have the Maznaim Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, summary of Code of Jewish Law, that there's those that read, there are those that read one verse at a time, then they read the same verse a second time, and then read the Aramaic. Then they read the Aramaic translation, and that is the opinion of the Alter Rebbe, the Chabad custom, to read it in that fashion, to read one verse at a time, and not to read a section at a time. Uvigmar yesh lemer achar hatargum pasuk echad b'Torah k'dei l'sayim b'Torah. After you go through the whole parsha, one should read, and after you go through the whole parsha and you say the Aramaic translation, you should end off after the Aramaic translation. Say the last verse again. Repeat the last verse, in order to end off reading the Torah. And it's preferable not to speak while you're reading. You're going over the Torah. You're going over the weekly Torah portion. The custom is to also read the Haftorah of that week's Torah portion. Some have the custom to say also the Shir HaShirim, part of a section of writings, is songs of songs. This custom is not the Chabad custom to read every week Song of Songs. If a person is traveling and he only has a chumash that doesn't have the translation of Targum, the Aramaic translation, Yikra Shtei Pamim Mikra, he should read the weekly Torah portion twice. And when he comes to a place that he has the translation, the Aramaic translation, he should read the Aramaic translation. Also, every God-fearing Jew should learn Rashi's commentary on that week's Torah portion. Vim la bar hachihu. if it's hard for him to understand Rashi's commentary, Yom Pirish Ashkenaz ala Sedra Kagain Sefer Tzeno Uriano Bekatema Shiyovin Inyan Sedra. He should learn an explanation of the Torah portion in the person's language, so that they could have some understanding of the weekly Torah portion. An example of a book that's like easier to understand is a book in Senariana. But we have, of course, we have plenty of Chumashim these days, plenty books of the Torah that have English translation, and you could understand and you could learn the Torah with the English translation. So in summary, what do we speak about in this halacha? In halacha 11, we talk about the obligation for a man to go through the weekly Torah portion by reading the Torah portion twice in Hebrew and once in Aramaic. And it's supposed to be done the week that you read that week's Torah portion. And the preferable time to go over the Torah portion is on Friday after midday. And the way that the Chabad, according to the Chabad custom, is to read one verse twice, and then read the Aramaic translation, then go on to the next verse, read the next verse twice in Hebrew, and then the Aramaic translation, and continue in that pattern until you go through the whole Torah portion. And then when you finish the Torah portion, after you read the Aramaic translation on the last verse, you should then say again the last verse in order to finish off with the Torah. Then there's the custom to also read the Haftorah.
I think these days there is a lot of people that can't read it in Hebrew, Kal vachomer in Aramaic. If you heard me.
What?
We have no voice.
You didn't hear me. Okay.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. The parasha, it says Vayira. What does it mean Vayira? He will be scared or he will see? Lirot or Vayira from the word Shoresh Vayira ve'ifrad?
You saw.
Oh, he saw.
Sorry, I'm not.
Oh,
Yes.
Vayira.
Right.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Rabbi. But the
Sorry, I don't
woman
hear
has
it.
no obligation
I really
to
apologize,
daven
but
so
I'm having a technical difficulty.
Yes.
Just gonna finish off just with the summary. Finish off the summary, and then we'll finish the class like that. That in a scenario when someone does not have the Aramaic translation with him, he should read the Torah portion twice. If he has a chumash and he doesn't have the Aramaic translation, and then when he reaches a place that he has the Aramaic translation, he should go and read the Aramaic translation. And it's also a good thing for a God-fearing Jew to learn Rashi's commentary on the weekly Torah portion. And if it's hard for a person to understand Rashi's commentary, they could learn a commentary. They could learn explanation of the Torah portion in a language that they understand. That's the summary for Halacha 11. And with that, we'll end the class. If anyone wants to, I could try once more to hear if I could hear questions. I'm not really hearing the questions. For some reason, I'm having a technical difficulty hearing, even though my sound's fully on. For some reason, it's not working, but you could try again.
Thank you, Rabbi Lifshitz. Have a good Shabbos. Fred and Laura.
Good Shabbos.
Thank you.
Shabbat
Thank you,
shalom.
Rabbi
Shabbat
Yossi.
shalom to
Good
all of you.
Shabbos.
Have a good
Bye,
Shabbos.
Smith. Good Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Good Shabbos.
Thank you all.
I'll turn this off. After I said good Shabbos, I turn this off. You want me to turn it on so you can, again, so you can say good Shabbos?
Good Shabbos.